The galaxy was vast, endless, and full of mysteries that no single species could ever hope to understand completely. Humanity had come a long way since its first steps into space. They were no longer confined to their small blue planet, but had joined the Galactic Concordia Union of advanced civilizations working together to keep peace across the stars. But even with all their progress, humans were still seen as newcomers, experienced and unpredictable compared to the older, more established races. Alex Carter stood on the bridge of the starship Aurora, staring out at the swirling expanse of stars beyond the viewport. He was young, barely in his late 20s, but he had already earned a reputation for being bold and determined. His dark hair was cut short, and his sharp blue eyes reflected both excitement and a hint of restlessness. Alex had always dreamed of exploring the unknown, for proving that humanity could stand shoulder to shoulder with the best warriors in the galaxy. But so far, his role had been limited to routine patrols and minor skirmishes, nothing that would truly test his skills. The Aurora was part of a fleet assigned to patrol the outer edges of Concord territory. These regions were often quiet, untouched by the conflicts that occasionally flared up between rival factions. Today, however, something felt different. The ship's sensors had picked up strange energy readings emanating from a cluster of asteroids nearby. It wasn't unusual to find abandoned ships or debris in these areas. But this signal was unlike anything they'd encountered before. Captain Laura Hayes, a seasoned officer with years of experience, studied the readings on her console. Her expression was calm, but there was a flicker of curiosity in her eyes. "What do you make of it?" she asked, turning to Alex. Alex hesitated for a moment, then straightened up. "Could be nothing," he said cautiously, "but it's worth checking out. If it's something valuable or dangerous, we can't just ignore it." Laura raised an eyebrow. Protocol dictated that they report any unusual findings to command before taking action. Venturing into uncharted territory without authorization was risky, especially given the tensions between the Concord and the Krylos, a hostile alien race known for their aggression. Still, Alex's enthusiasm was hard to dismiss. She trusted him, despite his occasional impulsiveness. "All right," Laura said finally. "We'll investigate, but carefully. No unnecessary risks." The crew prepared a shuttle for the mission. Equipping it with scanning devices and defensive weapons, Alex volunteered to lead the team, along with two other soldiers, Marcus Kane, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a steady demeanor, and Elena Rivera, a quick-thinking engineer who could fix almost anything under pressure. Together, they boarded the shuttle and set course for the source of the signal as they approached the asteroid field. The object came into view. It was a derelict vessel, its surface scarred and pitted from centuries of exposure to cosmic radiation. The design was unfamiliar, suggesting it belonged to a civilization long extinct. The energy readings grew stronger as they drew closer, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. "This thing looks ancient," Marcus muttered, peering through the shuttle's window. "Wonder what it's doing out here." "Let's find out," Alex replied, his voice tinged with excitement. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to uncover something extraordinary. Once inside the ship, the air was cold and stale, filled with the eerie silence of abandonment. Their boots echoed softly against the metallic floor as they moved deeper into the vessel. Lena scanned the walls with her equipment, trying to decipher the strange symbols etched into the metal. "I've never seen anything like this," she admitted. "It's not from any known language in the Concord database." They eventually reached what appeared to be the ship's central chamber. In the middle of the room stood a massive device, glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. It hummed softly, vibrating through the soles of their feet. Alex stepped forward, his eyes wide with wonder. "Whatever this is, it's powerful," he said. "If we can figure out how it works." Before he could finish, alarms blared throughout the ship. Red warning lights flashed overhead, casting eerie shadows across the chamber. "We're not alone," Elena shouted, pointing to a monitor displaying multiple incoming contacts. Moments later, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the corridors. The Krylos had arrived. Tall and insectoid, the Krylos were formidable opponents, their bodies covered in thick chitinous armor. Their eyes glowed with a menacing red light, and their claws clicked ominously as they surrounded the humans. Of them spoke in a harsh, guttural language, though none of the team understood the words. Alex instinctively raised his weapon, his heart pounding. "Stay calm," he whispered to his teammates. "You don't want to provoke them." But the Krylos weren't interested in negotiation. They lunged forward, forcing Alex and his team to retreat deeper into the ship. Panic set in as they realized they were outnumbered and trapped. Thinking quickly, Alex remembered the strange device in the central chamber. If they could activate it, whatever it might give them a fighting chance. "Fall back," he ordered, leading the way toward the chamber. Krylos pursued relentlessly, their movements swift and precise. Bullets ricocheted off their armored bodies, doing little damage. Back in the chamber, Alex frantically searched for a way to activate the device. Lena worked alongside him, her fingers flying over the controls. "Got it?" she exclaimed as the machine roared to life, emitting a blinding burst of energy. The Krylos froze mid-step, their glowing eyes dimming as if the energy had disrupted some vital system. Seizing the opportunity, Alex led his team back to the shuttle, leaving the derelict ship behind. As they escaped into the safety of the Aurora, Alex couldn't help but feel a mix of triumph and unease. They had survived, yes, but the encounter left him with more questions than answers. What was that device? Why had the Krylos been so desperate to claim it? Little did Alex know, his actions that day would set off a chain of events that would change the fate of humanity forever. Better or worse, the galaxy now knew that humans were capable of stepping into the fray and willing to take risks others wouldn't dare. News of the encounter spread quickly through the Galactic Concord. Reports detailed how a small human team had faced off against the Krylos, one of the most feared races in the galaxy. The story became a sensation, not just among humans, but across all member species of the Concord. For the first time, humanity was being talked about not as newcomers or outsiders, but as survivors who had stood their ground against overwhelming odds. Back on Earth, public opinion shifted dramatically. People were proud of what Alex Carter and his team had accomplished. Senator Ryan Mitchell, a charismatic politician known for his fiery speeches, seized the moment to push for a greater role for humanity in galactic affairs. "We've proven ourselves," he declared during a televised address. "It's time we stopped sitting on the sidelines and started contributing to the defense of the Concord. We owe it to ourselves and to our allies." His words resonated deeply with the people. Crowds gathered in city squares, chanting slogans like "Humans belong in the fight" and "No more waiting." Even those who had previously doubted humanity's place in the Alliance began to reconsider. Perhaps it was true. Perhaps humans could hold their own, alongside the older, more advanced species. But not everyone shared this optimism. Within the Concord leadership, debates raged over whether allowing humans to take a more active role was wise. Many alien representatives argued that humanity's emotional nature made them unpredictable in battle. They pointed out that Alex's actions, while brave, had been reckless. Venturing into uncharted territory without proper authorization, activating an unknown device without understanding its purpose, these were not the actions of a disciplined soldier, they claimed, but of someone driven by impulse. Despite these concerns, the pressure from both Earth and perhuman factions within the Concord grew too strong to ignore. Reluctantly, the Council agreed to allow a small contingent of human soldiers to participate in upcoming battles against the Krylos. It was decided that this would be a trial period. If humans performed well, they might earn permanent roles. In the Concord's military efforts, if not, well, no one wanted to think about that possibility. Alex Carter found himself thrust into the spotlight overnight. He was hailed as a hero, the face of humanity's newfound determination. Promotions followed quickly, and soon he was appointed to lead a mixed-species strike force called Task Group Epsilon. His new team included members from various alien races, each bringing unique skills to the table. Among them were Zara Voss, a navigator from the aquatic luminary race, and Rokar, stoic warrior from the insectoid Zithon clan. Zara was calm and methodical, her decisions guided by logic rather than emotion. Her people lived beneath the oceans of their homeworld, where patience and precision were essential for survival. She viewed Alex with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism, unsure whether his boldness would prove to be an asset or a liability. On the other hand, was a veteran of countless battles. His chitinous exoskeleton gleamed under the ship's artificial light, and his multifaceted eyes seemed to miss nothing. Though he rarely spoke, his presence commanded respect. Like Zara, he had doubts about serving under a human leader, but duty compelled him to follow orders. Task Group Epsilon's mission was clear: assist in defending key Concord outposts threatened by the Krylos. As Alex prepared for their first deployment, he couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and nervousness. This was his chance to prove that humanity deserved a seat at the table, not just as observers, but as equals. The training sessions leading up to their departure were intense. Alex worked tirelessly to earn the trust of his team, pushing himself harder than ever before. He spent hours learning about the strengths and weaknesses of his alien counterparts, determined to understand how best to integrate their abilities into his strategies. At night, when the others had gone to rest, he stayed up studying tactical manuals and reviewing simulations. Still, challenges arose almost immediately. During one exercise, Alex's tendency to rely on instinct clashed with Zara's preference for careful planning. When she suggested taking a longer route to avoid potential ambushes, Alex dismissed her advice, insisting that speed was more important. The decision backfired when their simulated convoy was ambushed, resulting in heavy virtual casualties. Afterward, Zara confronted him privately. "You may have courage, Alex," she said, her voice calm but firm. "But courage alone won't win battles. You need to listen to think before you act." Her words stung, but Alex knew she was right. From then on, he made a conscious effort to balance his instincts with the input of his teammates. Slowly, trust began to form between them. Even Rokar, who had initially shown little interest in Alex, started to acknowledge his growing competence. As the day of their deployment approached, Alex reflected on how far he'd come since that fateful mission aboard the derelict ship. Back then, he had acted purely on impulse, driven by curiosity and adrenaline. Now, he understood the weight of responsibility that came with leadership. Every decision he made could mean life or death for his team, for the Concord, and ultimately, for humanity itself. When the Aurora finally entered orbit around the outpost they were tasked with defending, Alex felt a surge of determination. Below them lay a sprawling complex surrounded by barren terrain, its defenses bristling with weapons ready to repel any attack. Intelligence reports indicated that a large Krylos force was en route, intent on seizing control of the facility. "All right, everyone," Alex said, addressing his team as they gathered in the briefing room. "This is it, our first real test. Stick to the plan, watch each other's backs, and remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves, we're fighting for every species in the Concord." The room fell silent as his words sank in. For the first time, Alex saw something in their eyes that hadn't been there before: unity. Despite their differences, they were no longer just individuals, they were a team. Hours later, the Krylos arrived. Their ships descended like shadows, dark and menacing against the pale glow of the planet's twin moons. Alarms blared as the outpost's defenders scrambled to prepare for the assault. Alex and his team took position near the perimeter, weapons at the ready. When the first wave of Krylos soldiers charged forward, Alex felt his heart race. This was at the moment he had trained for. But as the battle unfolded, he realized that nothing could have fully prepared him for the chaos of combat. The air was filled with the deafening roar of explosions and the crackle of energy weapons. Dust and smoke obscured visibility, making it difficult to tell friend from foe. Through it all, Alex relied on his training and on his team. Zara coordinated movements with pinpoint accuracy, guiding reinforcements to critical points on the battlefield. Rokar fought with brutal efficiency, his claws slicing through enemy armor like paper. And Alina, who had accompanied them as part of the engineering crew, worked miracles repairing damaged equipment under fire. For a brief moment, Alex allowed himself to believe they might actually pull this off. Then, disaster struck. A stray blast from a Krylos weapon hit a nearby fuel tank, triggering a massive explosion that sent shockwaves rippling through the area. Several members of Task Group Epsilon were thrown to the ground, dazed and injured. Communication channels filled with panicked voices as confusion spread. In the midst of the chaos, Alex spotted a group of Krylos breaking through the defensive line. If they reached the command center, the entire outpost would fall. Without hesitation, he rallied what remained of his team and led a desperate counterattack. Bullets flew, energy beams sizzled through the air, and for a few terrifying minutes, it seemed as though the tide might turn. But victory came at a cost. By the time the Krylos retreated, leaving behind a field littered with wreckage and bodies, Alex knew they had paid dearly. Too many lives had been lost, including 2 Luminary soldiers, who had sacrificed themselves to protect their comrades. As the dust settled and the survivors regrouped, Alex stared out at the devastation. The outpost had been saved, yes, but at what price? He couldn't shake the feeling that he had pushed his team too hard, asked too much of them. Guilt weighed heavily on his shoulders as he realized the true cost of war. Back on board the Aurora, the mood was somber. No one celebrated their hard-won victory. Instead, they mourned the fallen and tended to the wounded. Alex sat alone in his quarters, replaying the battle in his mind. Had he made the right choices? Could he have done more to prevent the losses? These questions haunted him long after the physical wounds had healed. Little did Alex know, the events of that day would set the stage for even greater challenges ahead. Humanity's trial by fire was only beginning, and the galaxy would soon learn just how high the stakes truly were. The aftermath of the battle left deep scars on Task Group Epsilon. The victory had been hard-fought, but it came at a heavy price. 2 members of the team were gone forever, their lives sacrificed in the chaos of war. For Alex Carter, the weight of leadership felt heavier than ever. He replayed every decision he had made during the fight, questioning whether he could have done something differently to save them. The guilt gnawed at him. Even as others praised his bravery and quick thinking, Zara Voss seemed quieter than usual, her calm demeanor masking the grief she felt for her fallen Luminary comrades. Okar, too, carried himself with a grim determination, though his stoic exterior gave little away. The rest of the team tried to move forward, but the cracks between them were growing wider. Trust, once fragile, now seemed on the verge of breaking completely. Back on Earth, however, the story was very different. News of the outpost's successful defense spread like wildfire. Media outlets celebrated Alex and his team as heroes, painting humanity as bold warriors capable of standing toe-to-toe with the galaxy's most fearsome foes. Senator Ryan Mitchell seized the opportunity to push his agenda further. "This is proof," he declared during a televised speech. "Humans are not just observers. We belong on the front lines." His words ignited a wave of patriotism across the planet. People cheered in the streets, waving flags and chanting slogans about human strength and courage. Politicians scrambled to capitalize on the newfound enthusiasm, promising increased funding for military programs and greater involvement in galactic affairs. It seemed that everyone wanted humanity to take its place among the stars, not as helpers or supporters, but as leaders. But behind closed doors, tension simmered within the galactic concord. Many alien representatives were uneasy about humanity's growing influence. They argued that humans were too reckless, too driven by emotion to be trusted with critical roles in warfare. Some even suggested that allowing humans to participate in battles might destabilize decades of carefully maintained peace. Despite these concerns, the Concord leadership found itself cornered. Public pressure from both Earth and pro-human factions within the Alliance made it difficult to roll back their decision. Instead, they doubled down, assigning Task Group Epsilon to more dangerous missions under the guise of testing humanity's capabilities. What no one realized was that these assignments were designed to push Alex and his team to their limits and perhaps beyond. Alex's next mission took him and his team to a remote mining colony on the edge of Krylos. Space. Intelligence reports indicated that the colony was producing resources vital to the Krylos war effort. Destroying it would deal a significant blow to their operations. But the mission came with a catch. The colony was heavily fortified, protected by layers of defenses and swarms of enemy soldiers. Success would require precision, coordination, maybe a little luck. As the Aurora approached the target zone, Alex gathered his team for a briefing. Zara studied the maps intently, pointing out weak points in the colony's defenses. "If we can disable the shield generators here and here," she said, tapping the holographic display, "we'll create an opening for a strike team to infiltrate." Rokar nodded in agreement, though his expression remained unreadable. "What?" "Need to act fast," he added. "The Krylos won't leave us much time." Alex listened carefully, absorbing their input. He knew this mission was crucial not just for the Concord, but for proving that humanity could handle the responsibility placed upon them. Still, doubt lingered in the back of his mind. Could they really pull this off without repeating the mistakes of their last battle? The operation began smoothly enough. Under cover of darkness, Alex led a small squad toward the first shield generator. Alina accompanied them, her engineering skills invaluable for disabling the complex machinery. As they worked, Zara coordinated air support from the Aurora, keeping enemy reinforcements at bay. For a while, everything went according to plan. But then, disaster struck. While planting explosives on the second generator, Marcus Cana, member of Alex's squad, triggered an alarm. Within seconds, the area was flooded with Krylos soldiers. Caught off guard, the humans scrambled to defend themselves, but the odds were stacked against them. Bullets ricocheted off metal walls and energy beams sliced through the air. "Fall back," Lex shouted, firing wildly as he tried to cover his retreating teammates. One by one, they regrouped near the extraction point, battered but alive. All except Marcus, who stayed behind to hold off the advancing Krylos forces. His sacrifice allowed the others to escape, but it left a bitter taste in their mouths. By the time they returned to the Aurora, the mood was somber. Another life-lost stand. For what? The mission had failed. The shield generators remained intact, and the colony continued its production uninterrupted. Alex locked himself in his quarters, replaying the events over and over in his mind. Had he pushed his team too far? Was he asking too much of them? Meanwhile, Zara confronted him later that evening. "You're putting us all in unnecessary danger," she said bluntly. Her voice was calm, but there was an edge to it that Alex hadn't heard before. "Your impulsiveness is going to get us killed." "I'm trying my best," Alex replied, frustration creeping into his tone. "I don't see. You coming up with better ideas?" "That's because I'm not the one leading this team," Zara shot back. "You are. And if you want us to trust you, you need to start making smarter decisions." Her words stung, but Alex knew she was right. He couldn't keep charging headfirst into every situation, expecting things to work out. If he wanted to earn the respect of his team and prove humanity's worth, he needed to change. Unbeknownst to Task Group Epsilon, the Krylos were learning from each encounter. Their intelligence operatives had been studying human behavior closely, analyzing patterns and tactics. What they discovered was both fascinating and alarming. Humans were emotional creatures, driven by passion and anger. These traits made them unpredictable in battle, but also vulnerable, determined to exploit this weakness. The Krylos launched a series of psychological attacks aimed at provoking fear and rage among their opponents. During one particularly harrowing mission, Alex and his team found themselves ambushed in a narrow canyon. The Krylos used loud, disorienting noises to unnerve them, coupled with holographic projections of grotesque creatures lunging from the shadows. Panic spread quickly, causing several members of the team to fire blindly at illusions that weren't real. Alex struggled to maintain control, shouting orders above the chaos, but even he wasn't immune to the effects. Battles flashed through his mind, faces of fallen comrades, screams of pain, explosions tearing apart the world around him. For a moment he froze, overwhelmed by the weight of it all. It was Rokar who snapped him out of it. Grabbing Alex by the shoulder, the Zithan warrior barked, "Focus, you're letting them win." Shaken but determined, Alex rallied his team and led them out of the canyon. They escaped with their lives, but the experience left lasting scars. That night, Alex lay awake in his bunk, staring at the ceiling. He couldn't shake the feeling that something inside him was changing. Sleep eluded him, replaced by vivid nightmares of blood-soaked battlefields and endless screams. Over time, these episodes grew worse. Alex became increasingly irritable, snapping at his teammates over minor issues. His judgment faltered, leading to poor decisions that put the team in unnecessary danger. Even Laura Hayes noticed the change, pulling him aside one day for a private conversation. "You're losing yourself, Alex," she said gently. "War does that to people. But you can't let it consume you not if you want to lead this team." Words hit home, forcing Alex to confront the truth. He wasn't just fighting the Krylos anymore. He was fighting himself. And unless he found a way to regain control, he risked losing everything, including the trust of those who depended on him, as Task Group Epsilon prepared for their next mission. Rumors circulated among the Concord leadership. Whispers of humanity's recklessness reached the ears of influential figures, sparking debates about whether humans should be allowed to continue serving in combat roles. Some argued that the risks outweighed the benefits, while others believed that humanity still had potential if properly managed. For Alex, the stakes had never been higher. Each mission brought new challenges, new losses, and new doubts. Yet amid the chaos, a glimmer of hope remained. Despite their differences, his team continued to stand by him, united by a shared purpose. Together, they faced the unknown, ready to confront whatever lay ahead of it, if it meant risking everything for a chance to prove themselves. Little did they know, the greatest test of all was yet to come. The breaking point came sooner than anyone expected. Task Group Epsilon was assigned to a mission that would test not only their skills, but also their unity as a team. The target was a heavily fortified Krylos supply depot located deep within enemy territory. Intelligence suggested that destroying it would cripple the Krylos' ability to wage war in the region, but the operation carried enormous risks, and failure was almost guaranteed without perfect execution. Alex Carter studied the mission briefing with a mix of determination and dread. He knew this was another chance to prove humanity's worth or to fail spectacularly. The pressure weighed heavily on him. It's not just from his superiors, but from the expectations of an entire species watching his every move. For weeks, he had been struggling with sleepless nights and vivid nightmares. His mind was clouded, his judgment faltering. Yet he couldn't afford to show weakness, not now, when so much depended on him. Zara Voss noticed the change in Alex immediately. She had always respected his courage, but lately his impulsiveness had become reckless. During planning sessions, she tried to steer him toward more cautious strategies, emphasizing patience over aggression. "We can't afford any mistakes. This time," she warned, "one wrong step and we're all dead." But Alex wasn't listening. Frustrated by recent failures and desperate to turn things around, he decided to take a bold approach. Instead of waiting for reinforcements or finding a safer entry point, he proposed a direct assault on the depot's main gate. "If we hit them hard and fast, they won't have time to react," he argued. "It's risky, but it's our best shot." Arokar, usually silent during such discussions, finally spoke up. "Your plan is reckless," he said bluntly, "putting us in unnecessary danger. We should stick to the original strategy." Alex bristled at the criticism. "We've been playing it safe for too long," he snapped. "And look where it's gotten us: nowhere. If we want results, we need to take risks." The tension between them was palpable. Zara exchanged worried glances with Elena Rivera, who had grown increasingly concerned about Alex's mental state. They all knew how dangerous it was to challenge authority in the middle of a mission, but they also couldn't ignore the growing unease within the team. When the day of the operation arrived, the atmosphere aboard the Aurora was tense. Everyone moved with quiet efficiency, checking weapons and reviewing plans one last time. As they approached the drop zone, Alex gave a final pep talk to his team. "This is it," he said, his voice steady despite the storm brewing inside him. "We've trained for this. We've fought side by side. Let's finish what we started." The shuttle descended into the planet's atmosphere, buffeted by strong winds and thick clouds of ash. Below them stretched a barren wasteland dotted with jagged rocks and twisted metal ruins, the remnants of previous battles. The supply depot loomed in the distance, its towering walls bristling with defensive turrets and patrolling guards. As soon as they landed, Alex led the charge toward the depot's main gate. True to his word, he didn't hesitate. Bullets flew as they engaged the first wave of Krylos soldiers, their insectoid forms emerging from the shadows like predators. Rokar fought fiercely, his claws slicing through enemy armor with deadly precision. Zara provided covering fire, her shots hitting their marks with unerring accuracy. Even Alina, though not a soldier by training, held her own, using makeshift explosives to disable several turrets. For a brief moment, it seemed like Alex's plan might actually work. They breached the outer defenses faster than anticipated, creating a path for the rest of the team to follow. But then disaster struck. A hidden ambush caught them off guard. Dozens of Krylos warriors poured out of concealed tunnels surrounding the humans and cutting off their retreat. Chaos erupted as the team scrambled to regroup. In the confusion, Alex made a fatal mistake. Ignoring Zara's warnings, he ordered a full frontal assault on the enemy forces. Believing that sheer force would break their lines, it didn't. The Krylos overwhelmed them with superior numbers and firepower. One by one, members of Task Group Epsilon fell back, injured or worse. A stray blast knocked Alex off his feet, leaving him dazed and disoriented. When he finally regained his senses, he realized the situation was dire. The team was scattered, morale was crumbling, and the mission was slipping away. Desperation fueled his next decision. Against all odds, Alex charged forward alone, firing wildly as he tried to create an opening for his teammates. His actions drew the attention of the Krylos, buying precious seconds for Zara and Rokar to rally the survivors. But it came at a terrible cost. Several civilians caught in the crossfire were killed, their screams echoing across the battlefield. By the time reinforcements arrived to extract the battered team, the damage was done. The depot remained intact, its supplies untouched. Worse still, innocent lives had been lost due to Alex's recklessness. As they limped back to the Aurora, the mood was somber. No one spoke. There was nothing left to say. Back on board, accusations flew. Zara confronted Alex in private, her calm demeanor giving way to anger. "This is your fault," she said, her voice trembling. "You put us all in danger because you couldn't control yourself. How many more have to die before you realize you're not invincible?" Alex wanted to defend himself, but the words caught in his throat. He knew she was right. Every decision he had made during the mission had been driven by emotion rather than logic. Pride, fear, and desperation had clouded his judgment, leading to catastrophic consequences. The fallout extended far beyond Task Group Epsilon. News of the failed operation and the civilian casualties spread quickly through the Galactic Concord. Public opinion, once overwhelmingly supportive of humanity's role in the war, began to shift. Critics pointed to Alex's actions as proof that humans were unfit for combat roles, citing their emotional volatility and lack of discipline. Calls for sanctions against Earth grew louder, with some factions demanding that all humans be stripped of military privileges entirely. Faced with mounting pressure, the High Council convened an emergency session to review humanity's status. Within the Alliance, Alex was summoned to testify, along with Captain Laura Hayes and other key figures involved in the mission. It was a daunting prospect, but Alex knew he had no choice. This was his chance to explain to justify his actions, but humanity's place in the galactic order. Standing before the council chamber, Alex felt small and insignificant. The room was vast, its high ceilings adorned with intricate carvings that represented the unity of the Concord's member species. Alien representatives sat in rows, their expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. At the center of it all stood the High Council itself, a group of beings chosen for their wisdom and impartiality. When it was his turn to speak, Alex stepped forward, his heart pounding. "I stand here today not to make excuses," he began, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment, "but to acknowledge my mistakes. I acted recklessly, and others paid the price for my errors. For that, I will carry the guilt for the rest of my life." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "But I also believe that humanity has something to offer the Concord, something unique. We may lack experience, but we are resilient, adapt, and above all, we learn from our failures. What happened on that mission was a tragedy, yes, but it doesn't define us. It challenges us to do better. His words resonated with some members of the council, particularly those who had witnessed humanity's potential firsthand. Others remained skeptical, unconvinced that humans could ever overcome their flaws. The debate raged on for hours, with arguments flying back and forth. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the council reached a decision. Humanity would retain its membership in the Concord, but under strict conditions. Direct combat roles would be revoked indefinitely, replaced by support functions such as research, logistics, and humanitarian aid. It was a compromise meant to preserve peace while acknowledging humanity's limitations. As Alex returned to Earth, the ruling weighed heavily on him. On one hand, he was relieved that humanity hadn't been cast out entirely. On the other, he couldn't shake the feeling that they had been given a second chance, and that squandering it would mean the end of everything they had worked for. In the weeks that followed, Alex sought solace in conversations with Emily Dawson, a psychologist specializing in post-war recovery. Through therapy, he began to confront the toll the conflict had taken on him. Nightmares still haunted him, but slowly he learned to manage them. More importantly, he gained a deeper understanding of his own strengths and weaknesses. Though humanity's days as warriors were over, Alex realized that their journey was far from finished. The galaxy still needed them not as fighters, but as builders, healers, and peacemakers. Perhaps he thought that was exactly where they belonged. The ruling from the High Council changed everything for humanity, for Task Group Epsilon, and especially for Alex Carter. The decision to bar humans from direct combat roles was met with mixed reactions on Earth. Some saw it as a betrayal, a slap in the face after all they had sacrificed. Others viewed it as an opportunity, a chance to redefine humanity's role in the galaxy. For Alex, however, it felt like a personal failure. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had let everyone down. In the days following the Council's verdict, Alex threw himself into his new responsibilities. Humanity's focus shifted toward supporting the Galactic Concord through research, logistics, and humanitarian efforts. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was vital. Teams of scientists worked tirelessly to develop new technologies, while engineers designed ships and equipment tailored to the needs of their alien allies. Medical teams were dispatched to war-torn regions, offering aid to both soldiers and civilians caught in the crossfire. Alex found himself assigned to oversee one such mission. His task was to coordinate relief efforts for a colony devastated by a recent Krylos attack. Assignment came with little fanfare, no speeches or ceremonies to mark the occasion. But Alex approached it with quiet determination. If he couldn't fight on the front lines anymore, he could at least help those who suffered because of the war. When he arrived at the colony, the devastation was overwhelming. Buildings lay in ruins, their skeletal remains jutting out of the ground like broken bones. Smoke still hung heavy in the air, mingling with the acrid smell of burning metal. Survivors wandered aimlessly, their faces blank with shock and grief. Children clung to their parents, too frightened to speak. Alex immediately set to work organizing supply drops and setting up temporary shelters. He collaborated closely with Zara Voss, who had volunteered her expertise in navigation to assist with the operation, though their relationship had been strained after the failed supply depot mission. They found common ground in their shared desire to make a difference. Slowly, trust began to rebuild between them. Rokar also joined the effort, using his strength and precision to clear debris and repair damaged infrastructure. Even Alina Rivera played a crucial role, improvising solutions for problems that arose. Along the way, together they transformed chaos into order, bringing hope back to a shattered community. Despite the progress they made, Alex struggled to find peace within himself. Nights were the hardest. When the work was done, and the others had gone to rest, he sat alone in his quarters, staring at the stars outside his window. The nightmares returned, the same vivid images of battlefields soaked in blood, of faces frozen in terror. Each time he closed his eyes, he saw the civilians who had died because of his reckless decisions. Their voices haunted him, whispering accusations he couldn't silence. Emily Dawson, The psychologist who had helped him process his trauma earlier continued to check in regularly. Guilt is natural, she told him during one session. But you can't let it consume you. You're doing good work now. Focus on that. Her words offered some comfort, but the scars ran deep. Alex knew he would carry them forever. Still, he tried to channel his pain into something productive. Every life saved, every family reunited, felt like a small step toward redemption. Meanwhile, tensions between the Galactic Concord and the Krylos reached a boiling point. The Krylos had grown bolder, launching attacks on key Concord outposts. With increasing frequency, intelligence reports suggested they were planning something big, a final push to break the alliance once and for all. Rumors swirled about a secret weapon capable of wiping out entire planets. Though no one could confirm its existence, the Concord leadership scrambled to prepare for the worst. With humanity restricted to non-combat roles, the burden fell heavily. On the older, more experienced species, ships were mobilized, troops deployed, and emergency protocols enacted. Yet even with these preparations, fear lingered in the air. The Krylos were relentless, and their tactics unpredictable. As the threat loomed closer, whispers spread among the Concord ranks. Some argued that humanity should be allowed to rejoin the fight not as leaders, but as reinforcements.
After all,
Numbers mattered in warfare, and every soldier counted. Others vehemently opposed the idea, citing past failures and the risks involved. Caught in the middle of this debate was Captain Laura Hayes. She had always believed in humanity's potential, but she also understood the dangers of rushing unprepared into battle. When the High Council called another emergency meeting to discuss the matter, she spoke passionately in favor of compromise. "We don't need humans on the front lines," she argued. "But we do need their ingenuity, their adaptability. Them support us in ways only they can. Give them a chance to prove themselves not as warriors, but as innovators." Her plea resonated with some members of the council, who reluctantly agreed to reconsider humanity's role. A limited number of human volunteers would be permitted to assist in critical missions, but only under strict supervision and with clearly defined objectives. It was a small victory, but one that reignited hope among Earth's leaders. Task Group Epsilon received orders to report to a classified location near the heart of Krylos territory. Details were scarce, but the mission was clear: gather intelligence on enemy movements and provide logistical support to frontline forces. For Alex, it was a chance to contribute without repeating the mistakes of the past. He vowed to approach the task with caution and humility, determined not to let his emotions get the better of him again. The journey to the designated zone was tense. Everyone aboard the Aurora knew the stakes. This wasn't just another assignment, it was humanity's last chance to prove its worth. Failure here would mean permanent exclusion from galactic affairs, leaving Earth isolated and vulnerable. Upon arrival, they discovered a grim scene. The area was littered with the wreckage of Concord ships, their hulls torn apart by Krylos weaponry. Survivors huddled in makeshift camps, their morale shattered. Among them were wounded soldiers awaiting evacuation, their injuries severe and often untreated due to a lack of medical supplies. Alex sprang into action, coordinating rescue operations and ensuring the injured received proper care. Zara used her navigational skills to map safe routes for evacuation shuttles, while Rokar led teams tasked with securing the perimeter against potential ambushes. Lena worked miracles in the field hospital, improvising treatments with limited resources. Despite the dire circumstances, they managed to stabilize the situation, earning the gratitude of those they helped. But the real test came when a massive Krylos fleet appeared on the horizon. It was larger than anything they had encountered before, ships bristling with weapons and glowing ominously in the darkness. Panic spread quickly as the enemy advanced, cutting off escape routes and pinning down the remaining Concord forces. For a moment, Alex froze. Memories of past failures flooded his mind, threatening to overwhelm him. But then he remembered Emily's advice: focus on what you can control. Taking a deep breath, he rallied his team and devised a plan. "Zara, I need you two. Guide the shuttles out of here," he instructed. "Rokar, take your team and hold the line long enough for them to get away. Alina, stay with the wounded and keep them stable until reinforcements arrive. What about you?" Zara asked, her voice tinged with concern. I'll stay behind. And buy you time, Alex replied firmly. It's the only way. Protests erupted, but Alex silenced them with a look. This isn't about me, he said. It's about making sure everyone else gets out alive. Trust me, I've learned my lesson. Reluctantly, the team followed his orders. As the evacuation began, Alex positioned himself at a critical choke point, armed with nothing but a rifle and a stubborn refusal to give up. When the first wave of Krylos soldiers charged forward, he stood his ground, firing steadily as explosions rocked the battlefield around him. Time seemed to slow as he fought, each bullet finding its mark with deadly accuracy. Pain seared through his body as he took hit after hit, but he refused to fall. Through sheer willpower, he held the line long enough for the last shuttle to escape. Only then did he allow himself to collapse, his vision fading to black. When Alex woke, he was lying in a medical bay aboard a Concorde cruiser. Sunlight streamed through the windows, casting warm golden light across the room. For a moment, he thought he might be dreaming. Then he saw Zara standing nearby, her expression softening as their eyes met. You did it, she said simply. You gave us the time we needed. Alex tried to sit up, wincing at the pain that shot through his body. Did we win? Zara hesitated. Before answering, not yet. Next to you and your team, we have a fighting chance. As Alex drifted back to sleep, he felt a sense of peace wash over him. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, he believed humanity had earned its place among the stars, not as conquerors, but as contributors. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The battle against the Krylos fleet marked a turning point not just for Task Group Epsilon, but for humanity's role in the galaxy. News of Alex Carter's sacrifice spread quickly through the ranks of the Galactic Concorde. Even those who had doubted humans before were forced to acknowledge their bravery and determination. Though Alex survived his injuries, the scars, both physical and emotional, remained. They served as a reminder of everything he and his team had endured. In the aftermath of the fight, the High Council convened once more to review humanity's performance. The debates were heated, with representatives from various species arguing passionately about whether humans should be allowed greater involvement in future conflicts. Some pointed to Alex's actions as proof that humanity still lacked the discipline required for combat roles. Others emphasized the critical support humans had provided during the evacuation, highlighting their adaptability and ingenuity. Ultimately, the Council reached a decision. Humanity would not return to direct combat roles, but their contributions would be recognized and valued. Instead of fighting on the front lines, humans would serve as mediators, engineers, and diplomats, roles better suited to their unique strengths. It was a compromise that left some unsatisfied, but it ensured humanity's continued place within the Concorde. Alex accepted the ruling without protest. After all he had been through, he understood the wisdom behind it. Humans weren't ready to fight alongside older, more experienced races, at least not yet, but they could still make a difference in other ways. For Alex, this realization brought a sense of clarity. He no longer felt the need to prove himself through reckless acts of heroism. Instead, he focused on what truly mattered: helping others and building a better future. Months passed, and life began to settle into a new rhythm. Task Group Epsilon disbanded officially, its members reassigned to different postings across the galaxy. Zara Voss returned to her homeworld, where she resumed her duties as a navigator while mentoring young recruits. Rokar rejoined his Zithon brethren, using his experience to train the next generation of warriors. Alina Rivera stayed aboard the Aurora, continuing her work as an engineer and occasionally collaborating with alien scientists on groundbreaking projects. As for Alex, he chose to step away from active duty altogether. His injuries had healed, but the psychological toll of war lingered. Nightmares still plagued him, though they came less frequently now. With Emily Dawson's guidance, he learned coping strategies to manage his PTSD. Slowly, he began to rebuild his life. He took a position at a training facility back on Earth, where he mentored young soldiers preparing for service in the Concorde. At first, many of the recruits saw him as a legend, a symbol of human courage and resilience. But Alex didn't want to be idolized. Instead, he shared his mistakes openly, teaching them the lessons he had learned the hard way. War isn't about glory, he told them during one session. It's about survival. It's about protecting the people who depend on you. Sometimes, it's about knowing when to step back and let someone else take the lead. His words resonated deeply with the recruits, who admired his honesty and humility. Under his guidance, they developed not only tactical skills but also emotional intelligence, the ability to think critically and act responsibly under pressure. Alex found purpose in this work, knowing he was shaping the next generation of leaders. Years later, peace finally came to the galaxy. The Krylos, weakened by years of conflict and internal strife, agreed to negotiate a truce with the Concord. It wasn't an easy process. Soul wounds ran deep, and trust was hard to rebuild. But humanity played a key role in brokering the agreement. Leveraging their diplomatic skills to bridge divides between warring factions, Alex attended the signing ceremony as an honored guest. Standing among representatives from dozens of species, he felt a swell of pride, not for himself, but for what humanity had achieved. They hadn't won the war, but they had helped end it. That, he realized, was worth far more than any battlefield. Victory. Afterward, Alex returned to Earth, where he spent his days quietly reflecting on the journey he had taken. He often visited the coast, walking along the shoreline as waves crashed against the rocks. There, beneath the vast expanse of sky, he thought about how far humanity had come since its first steps into space. They had started as newcomers, eager but inexperienced, desperate to prove themselves. Along the way, they had made mistakes costly ones, but they had also grown. They'd learned that strength wasn't measured by how many battles you fought, but by how much good you did in the world. And perhaps most importantly, they had discovered their true place in the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as contributors. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Alex stood alone on the beach. In his hand, he held a small device given to him by Zara before she left for her homeworld. It was a translator chip, capable of decoding languages from across the galaxy. She had told him it represented hope for understanding, for unity, for a brighter future. Alex smiled faintly as he slipped the chip into his pocket. The road ahead wouldn't always be easy. There would still be challenges, disagreements, and moments of doubt. But for the first time in a long while, he felt hopeful. Humanity had earned its place among the stars, not through force or aggression, but through perseverance and heart, and maybe, he thought, that was exactly where they belonged.